Here we go. All right. So, weight of the nation discussion. What we're going to talk about first is the student learning outcomes. You're going to recall maybe the name of the individual who created the body mass index. Why is that important that you remember his name? Because usually if you remember someone's name, you understand why you're remembering that person's name. Or you can connect a name to a scale. So that may help you remember, it may not. Recall the year the BMI was first created. Interpret BMI and classify healthy, overweight, and obese adults. Describe the risks of being overweight as a child and as an adult. Examine, discuss, and evaluate the Bogalusa heart study. And list the 7 factors and health behaviors for ideal cardiovascular health. So that's student learning outcomes for today. So who created the body mass index? Raise your hand if you think you remember the name. Or where he was from. Starts with a B. All right. Adolphe Quetet. He was a Belgian statistician. His formula for body mass index is mass over height squared. Okay, his formula for body mass index is used to estimate the proportion of fat a person has based on height and weight. Okay, what percentage of adult Americans are overweight or obese? What percentage of Americans are overweight or obese? I'm just going to point and you're just going to give me a guess. What percentage? 53, 42, 68, 25, 60, 65, 63, 64,
66,
62, 65, 66.
66. You said 68? Where'd you get that number from? The video. She watched the video. Good job. All right, clap it up for her. Clap it up for her. Clap it up for her. You got to reward people that do the right thing. That is teaching rule number 1, right? If I ask you to watch a video, you watch the video, but I don't acknowledge it, why did I ask you to watch the video? I want you to watch and listen and read and review the content before a class so we have something to talk about. That's called flipping the classroom. Typically, you're used to a lecture, you're learning lecture for the first time, and you have nothing to say about it because you didn't learn about it before. But the teacher knows more than you because they're just listening to content. When you teach, it's important for your students to have the content before you see them, because otherwise they're going to have nothing to really think about or talk about before they see you. And as a teacher, you want to know who is paying attention to your directions and your content in your course. So that's really important, because I know that when people strive to go above and beyond, I know that they're going to have more opportunities. And if they're going to have more opportunities, I'm going to try to help them make their own goals. So yeah, 68.8% of American adults are overweight or obese. This is in 2012. Okay, numbers have probably changed. In your reflections, in your writings, if you want to find out what the current statistic is, that would be great. Okay, adults with BMI between 18.5 and 24.9 are considered to be a healthy weight. Adults with a BMI between 25 and 29.9 are considered to be overweight, and adults with a BMI of 30 or higher are considered to be obese. Okay, so depending on where you are in this BMI, and this isn't the most accurate measurement, but for general purposes, when you're counting and measuring children in a school, you have to have an easy measurement, okay? And this is pretty good, but obviously there's people with more muscle mass who are going to fall into the overweight category because they have more body tone and muscle. So sometimes it's not totally reflective of people that hold a lot of muscle. What year did the Bogalusa study begin? What year? What year? What year? What? Go ahead and give me a guess. 1972. Nice. So Bogalusa here. Gulf of Mexico, as you know, what's going to happen there tonight? Not good. Hurricane is going to hit Louisiana. Does anyone have family or friends in Louisiana? Any stories or anything going on that you know of?
I'm not sure if she's on a military base, so.
Okay. Yeah,
She's temporarily, but she's there now.
He hasn't really told me much. He just says they're getting shelter.
Who was here for the hurricane that we had a couple weeks ago? That was a 1, but it felt, for me, I don't know, it felt like a 3 to me. It felt,
Power went out so much quicker than normal.
yeah, power was out, trees were down just as much as a 3. I was like, this was more than a 1. But yeah, so my thoughts are with them. Hopefully, people get out of there that need to get out of there. So, 1972, Cindy Roach, 93% of Bogalusa children became part of the Bogalusa Heart Study. That's almost 100% of all the children in one town. When you are doing a study and you have 1 or 2 people in your study, are your results going to matter that much? Or is 1 case or 2 cases going to matter? I mean, it might for specific people that are the same, you know, but now we're looking at a whole city. So this is why this is important. So that's a picture from 1983. Bogalusa Heart Study was designed to look at all aspects of childhood health, including weight, as future predictors of adult heart disease. So they wanted to know if weight was a predictor of heart disease. Now in its 40th year, and then now it's probably going toward its 50th year, the Bogalusa Heart Study grew to follow more than 16,000 children into adulthood. What was a relevant finding when performing autopsies of accidental deaths? Who thinks they can answer that without looking at the notes? You already got 1. Who's that? What did you come up with?
I think it was talking about how they found out that kids having heart problems. That was being related to being obese.
Right. So they were finding kids who died accidentally that had heart lesions and fat all over their organs. So we're going to find out the implications of that. Bogalusa Heart Study was the first study in the world to autopsy children who died from accidental and non-cardiac causes in search of evidence of heart disease. So they were really examining these people head to toe during life, after death, and autopsying when they were young. So they had all these people in this study. 20% of autopsy children had plaque in their coronary arteries. Coronary heart disease is the number 1 cause of death, right? Heart disease, heart failure. Raise your hand if you know somebody has had a heart attack. Okay. My grandfather, he died of a heart attack when he was 56. I'm 36. That's 20 years older than me right now. My father, he's 30 years older than me, he's 66. My mom, she's 66. So I mean, that sounds young, but they didn't know the things they know now. He was a big smoker, big drinker, and he ate a lot of fat and sodium. Those children were known to have high blood pressure and high cholesterol. Okay, blood pressure and cholesterol. What is a healthy blood pressure? When you go get checked for blood pressure, what's a healthy blood pressure? Anybody know?
120 over 80.
120 over 80 or under. Yeah, 60 to 80 you want to be that bottom number, and anything over 120 is going to be too high. So 120 to 130, they put you at like a level, a certain level. And then 130 to 140, it gets worse. And then if you're at 150 to 160 at resting, you have some major blood pressure issues. Why does blood pressure rise? Does anyone know why blood pressure rises? Anybody have an idea? Why would the blood pressure go faster? Why is the blood pressure going faster? What's happening in the heart?
It's working harder.
It's working harder. Why is the heart working harder?
Maybe to try to like compensate for like if someone's like obese or something like that. Maybe to compensate for like all the weight and stuff that they have.
Right, the weight. And the weight is the indicator of fat deposits on the heart, right? So if the weight is high, you're more likely to have fat deposits on your heart. And if you have fat deposits on your heart, your heart has to work harder. Why? Because your arteries are narrow. Try pushing fluid through a narrow pipe compared to pushing fluid through a thick wall, a thick pipe or a big pipe, right? If you push, if you squeeze, if you have very good, arteries, you don't have to push that hard, right? So the heart beats faster because it has to push harder to go through those narrow arteries and veins. So, and these autopsies were the first scientific evidence that the plaques involved in heart disease can exist in children, okay? Do arteries carry blood away from the heart or toward the heart? There's arteries and there's veins. What do you think? Away, yep, good. So I think of arteries, away. Arteries push blood away from the heart. And the aorta, that's the main artery that goes up and then it goes out. Body mass index, okay, there's a little scale there. How much more likely were obese children to develop high blood pressure compared to healthy weight children? So how much more likely were obese children to develop high blood pressure compared to healthy weight children? How many times more likely? 1 time more likely, 2 times more likely, 3 times more likely, 4 times more likely? What's your guess? How many times more likely?
10.
10?
7.
7? 10? 8?
9.
9? 5? 7? 6?
5.
5? 6? 6? 7? 5. We'll find out in a little bit. What percent of children that were obese as a child were obese as an adult? What percent of the children that were obese as a child were obese as an adult? What do you think the percentage would be? 80?
15.
15%? 72? 70? 60? 75? 70?
73.
73?
60.
60?
72.
72? 80?
95.
95?
70.
70. All right, let's check it out. So how much more likely were obese children to develop high blood pressure compared to healthy weight children? Raise your hand if you said 8 times more likely. Good job. 7 was close, 10 was close. And 77% of the participants who were obese as children remained obese as adults. So what is the likelihood? Obviously, the likelihood is 77% chance for this study. This isn't going to be for all towns, and it's not going to be for all people. It's just a Bogalusa heart study. But 77% came back, were obese as adults. What percent of participants who were healthy weight as children became obese adults? Now, think about this question first. What percentage of participants who were at healthy weight as children became obese as adults? Think of a healthy kid in this study. He's healthy, everything's good to go, grows up into adulthood. What do you think his chances are becoming obese? A healthy kid getting to obesity. Healthy weight to obesity. What are the percent chance do you think? 15%. 15% chance? 30? 22? 12 or 10? 20? 18? 20?
25.
25? 25? 20?
17.
17?
20.
20?
20.
Who said 10 or under? Who said 15 or under? Okay. 7%. So that means 93% of healthy kids grow up to be healthy weight in this study. And this is a study that obviously is looking at a town that has low income. And so towns that are similar, that have low income, might have the same result, might. We can't say that they would have the same results. Okay. So what's that telling us? It's telling us that be a healthy kid, you're likely to be a healthy adult. So what do we need to focus on, right? The kids. If we're focusing on, what to do after the fact, then we're not preventing the problem. So childhood obesity and intervening obesity has to happen at the youngest age possible. Who feeds children though? Raise your hand. Who feeds the children? Parents. I mean, that's an obvious, but why does that matter? Most of the time the kids are not selecting what they eat. They are quote unquote selecting when they go to the grocery store and say, oh, I want this or I want that. I see that on TV, I want that. But who ultimately has the final say? Parents do. Now, if an individual has autism spectrum disorder or has a gastrointestinal disability, then they might have to be on, the individual might only eat chicken nuggets and fries. And you can't get them to eat broccoli. You can't get them to eat carrots. Maybe you can't get them to eat any fruit or vegetables. Sometimes people and kids are very picky eaters. So to combat that, you have to be very creative sometimes. One, maybe don't even introduce those foods to begin with. That would probably be a start. I never had chicken nuggets and fries like that until probably I was like, in high school. I mean, we would go to like hot dog and like hamburgers stuff, but that was like once in a while. But now it feels like you can get that all the time. So out of the 10 states with the highest obesity rates, blank rank among the nation's poorest. So there's 10 states that have the highest obesity rates. How many do you think rank among the nation's poorest out of those 10? So how many do you think out of those 10 are ranked as poorest?
All 10 of them.
You think all 10? 3? 9? 8? 9? 8? 9? 5? 7? 8?
9, 7, 9.
9. All right, let's check it out. So 9 of those states. So out of the 10 states with the highest obesity rates, 9 rank among our nation's poorest. So our nation's poorest towns, poorest states here have the highest obesity rates in the nation. In 2009, this was studied, and 1 year later, they released the first study to show that in one American town, almost 50% of children are now overweight or obese. Okay, what are the 7 factors and health behaviors for ideal cardiovascular health? So what are these 7 health factors and health behaviors for ideal cardiovascular health? Who thinks they can help me name those factors to lower your chances of dying of heart disease and to lower fat deposits in your body? So these 7 factors would probably be included in any type of intervention strategy, which is important because you're going to be studying intervention strategies and presenting on one of these 7 topics or all of them. So what do you think?
Family history.
Family history, good point. Genetics.
Like exercise and stuff.
Okay, physical activity,
Diet.
diet, nutrition, genetics,
Like access to health.
access, yep,
Financial.
finance,
Like stress related stuff.
okay, stress,
Like how your parents see or the people around you.
okay, parents,
Not smoking.
not smoking, that's definitely one.
Physical activity.
Physical activity,
Just environment.
environmental health,
Normal blood pressure.
normal blood pressure,
Alcohol.
and alcohol, okay? So optimal cholesterol is usually going to be at the top of the list. So that's going to be one of the first indicators. What do you want your total cholesterol to be under? Anybody know what you want your total cholesterol? You have HDL, high density lipid, and you have LDL, low density lipid. HDL and LDL, you want your HDL to be high, and you want your LDL to be low. Low density lipids is what that means, and high density lipids. You want to have those low density lipids low because those are obviously what you don't want. You want the HDL to be high because those are the cholesterols that you do want. What increases your HDL? And you want your HDL to be high. What increases your HDL?
Maybe healthy fats?
Okay, healthy fats can increase. So healthy fats can decrease your LDL,
Okay.
but they also a factor in increasing your HDL.
Physical activity, aerobic endurance.
Yes, aerobic endurance is one of the number one factors of increasing your HDL, your cardiorespiratory health. Now, what about your LDL? What do you think increases LDL? And you want those to be low. What do you think increases LDL? Cholesterol. Low density. So low density, right? High density is compact, right? It's, compact. Low density is like big, right? Low density. Why do we want low density? Those trans fats. Were you about to say something? So trans fats will increase your LDL, and usually your diet is saturated fats will increase your LDL. Now, how much percent fat do you want per day out of your 100% food circle? So you're eating carbs, fats, and proteins. Those are the three macronutrients. How much percent of the fats should be in your diet? What percent do you think?
Maybe 20%.
20?
15.
15?
Like 18%.
18?
10%.
10?
20.
20? 10?
15.
15? 10?
20.
10, 10, 15.
Okay, so it's recommended that you get 30% fat, about 10 to 15% protein, and the rest carbs. Okay, about 50 to 60% carbs, depending on how much you move. Because all movement requires energy. All energy is broken down into sugars. So any fat that you have has to be broken down into sugar first before it's used. Okay. Now, when you are working out and when you're performing physical activity, you are getting rid of fat through your breathing. Okay. 85% of fat that leaves your body leaves through your respiratory system. 15% of the fat that leaves your body leaves through sweat and waste. So it doesn't just disappear. When you breathe out the chemical structure of fat. And when you breathe out more fat. Breathing exercises isn't going to help you burn fat, but cardiorespiratory activities that get your heart rate up and you're breathing at high levels is going to burn fat. 185 minus your age is going to be your best cardio fat burning heart rate. So take your age, 185, go ahead and put 185 minus your age, see what that is. Give or take 5 beats per minute. Some people might have to adjust that, but that zone for me, I think is around like let's see. I'm at 185. I'll just say I'm 35 for today. So about 150, okay? So about 150 is a level that I don't want to really go over, but I want to make sure that if I get there, I know that I'm burning fat. So 130 to 150 for me is a good heart burning zone. Normal blood pressure, we talked about that. Not having diabetes, okay? There's 2 types of diabetes. We'll talk more about diabetes on a different day. That's its own lesson. You can have a whole course on diabetes. Diabetes is so complex that it's hard to just briefly talk about diabetes. But there's type 1, there's type 2. Type 1 is insulin dependency, right? And type 2 is having your blood sugar looked at. And if you have diabetes and you would like to talk about that with the class, that's something that we can discuss before a class one day. Okay, lean body mass index. So having lean body mass, low fat, high muscle tone Again, you want about 10 to 15% of your diet from protein. Don't want to go less than that. If you're not eating protein, what happens is protein sparing happens, where you start to break down your muscle and bone, uses energy. Okay? Make sure that you're eating at least 10 to 15% protein. And then not being a smoker, okay, that's obviously going to lower your blood pressure. Smoking is going to increase your respiratory issues, which is going to make it hard for you to work out and also take on a lot of long activities that take a lot of respiratory system activity. So you have physical activity. How many minutes a day does most World Health Organizations, CDC, how many minutes per week are you supposed to exercise? How many minutes, you know? That's typically generally recommended for all people. Yes. How many minutes do you think? A week?
400.
400?
420,
420? 28?
no, 180.
180? 90? 400? 300? 180? 300?
400.
400?
300.
300? 250? 300?
150.
150. Where'd you learn that?
I took a class last semester and learned about it. So.
Yeah. So that's a general recommendation. If you're getting less than 150, that's suboptimal. Getting 150 or higher is optimal. They say that going from 150 to 200 doesn't make that much of a difference. But obviously, if you're not getting at least 150, you need to recommend that individual to 150. If they're getting 150 and they're not getting results, you obviously got to get those minutes up. And healthy diet, vegetables, fiber, getting 30% fiber a day. That's your recommended daily value, 30%. And then also, how much percent of your diet should be saturated fat? So you're allotted 25 to 30% fat per day because you need fat for your organs, you need fat for your endocrine system. Women need fat for their endocrine system especially, or you can have some issues with your menstrual cycle. Men, they say that there's some foods that will increase and decrease testosterone, but I wouldn't believe too much of that kind of stuff. But definitely, if you're not getting enough fat as a female, it can change your reproductive system. And also for men too, if men don't get enough fat, and if they get under 5% body fat, they can have some major endocrine system issues too. So fat is important for the endocrine and brain, okay? And healthy diet is really important. You want to get less than 10% of your fats from saturated fats. The rest should be from mono or unsaturated fats. So every day that you eat, you want to make sure that you're not eating more than 10% of daily value of saturated fats. Saturated fats, they're in cheeses, fried foods, chips, and stuff like that. All right. What percentage of American adults were obese in 1960? Just go ahead and yell it out. What percent of people in 1960 were obese? Just yell it out. What percent do you think?
35.
75% people? You think more people were obese?
That's a 35.
35? 10% of people in 1960 were obese. And now it is all the way up to 35, and that was in 2008. A little shorter for females. What was common about wealthier families from 1988 to 1994 that are no longer relevant regarding today? And that is that it used to affect more poor people. Now it's affecting poor and rich. So from 1988 to 1994, obesity rise quicker in people that were poor, and now people that have more money are starting to catch up. And where is the forefront of the obesity epidemic in the United States? And that is the South. Okay, the South, right in the mid-South there. Okay, that is the kind of where most of the obesity is starting to occur and almost spread out from. Okay, and so watch this. I'm going to go ahead and